Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to qualifying day in Budapest for the 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. I hope you guys are well after a couple weeks break from a very hectic triple header we had just a few weeks ago. And yeah, finally Formula One is back, and we've only got a couple races now before the summer break. Obviously, this weekend we are in Hungary. Next weekend is the final race before the summer break at Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix. And once again, looking at practice so far, things are looking very competitive. Not quite sure still who is going to end up on pole position. Certain teams are looking good, but we've seen it sway in qualifying before. So yeah, it's going to be another exciting day. And qualifying has, of course, been very exciting in 2024. We've seen that multiple times across this year. So yeah, cannot wait to see what we're going to get today. And fingers crossed, it will be a great battle between whomever for pole position in Hungary. And you have to say, the last definitely couple qualifying sessions we've had here in Hungary have been some of the best qualifying sessions we've had in recent history, in terms of surprises and just a competitive field. So yeah, really hope we can get that today. Hope you guys are doing well. Obviously, I haven't seen you guys for a couple weeks. Yeah, hope you guys are doing well after this last couple weeks without Formula One. And of course, today I will be taking you through qualifying for the Hungarian Grand Prix. And the usual format, we'll be going through, of course, what happened yesterday in practice 2, looking at the data from the teams so far, looking at the sector time data just to see where certain teams are quick and not so quick, and just getting an idea as to, what the general pace is this weekend. Then, of course, I'll give my predictions for this session coming up, as you can see, in just under an hour and a half's time. We'll also get into upgrades. There has been quite a few upgrades for certain teams this weekend, which we definitely need to get into, because that could prove very important, not only for today, but for this weekend's Grand Prix event. And then, of course, once going through all of that, we'll get into qualifying and then see how it all shakes out. But yeah, hope you guys are doing well, no matter what time zone you're in, part of the world you're from. Hope you're all having as best time as possible. And I hope you can join me today in either watching along or just enjoying what happens in qualifying today in Hungary. A quick reminder, as usual, there is a poll running on the top of the live chat where I've asked you guys, who do you think will take pole position today? Will it be Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, or Lewis Hamilton? Let me know, out of those 4 drivers, who you think takes pole position in Hungary. And of course, I'll let you guys know who I think will be on pole momentarily. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very close fight. Definitely, I can't see it being an easily won battle today. So let's quickly, before we, go on to, what happened. Oh, actually, we're not going to do that. I was going to say let's go on to the championship standings, just a reminder of that before we get into things. But, of course, in my last podcast episode, the last bit of content I put up on the channel, if you haven't seen, by the way, make sure you go and check out. It was my podcast episode reviewing the British Grand Prix. Of course, British Grand Prix happened, and I did go through, I believe, on screen, the championship standings. So let's just get into what's happened so far this weekend. So let me just go to the results of practice 2 yesterday. Now, Lando Norris ended up quickest at a 1:17.7, but Lando and, well, everyone went a lot quicker in practice 3. That 1:17.7 was actually quite slow compared to what Lando did in practice 3. Where in practice 3, Lando Norris ended up quickest, only by half a tenth ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri by, half a tenth. And Lando did a 1:16.0. So 1.7 seconds quicker than the best time of yesterday. So I don't know if teams yesterday were just really holding back, or if the track, in terms of the grip, has just really stepped up a gear compared to yesterday. But yeah, that is a massive improvement of lap time, and pole position probably is going to be today. I think a low 1:15, maybe a late 1 minute 14, somewhere in that range. Probably between a 1:14.8 and a 1:15.1, I would say, is where pole position will be. But even though in practice 3 the lap times were a lot quicker, in terms of the pecking order, it was really kind of the same as what we saw yesterday. So with practice 2, McLaren were quickest. Red Bull, quarter of a second back, but we do know Red Bull do tend to sandbag a bit more on a Friday compared to most teams. So I'd say Friday was a pretty good day for Red Bull in terms of where they ended up. Carlos Sainz in third doesn't really tell the story of where Ferrari are. Ferrari are not in a good position this weekend with their pace, and we'll get on to why later on. Sergio Perez up in fourth. Perez has looked a bit competitive this weekend, which is good to see, and he really needs to be competitive this weekend because the rumours of him not being in that car continue to swirl around and just ramp up, so he needs to put in some performances. George Russell fifth in the Mercedes. Mercedes, I think, also not quite yesterday running as aggressively as they could have, and as well, you guys may have seen in the news this Microsoft IT crash that happened yesterday that affected lots of things around the world. Well, of course, that was, I think, to do with CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike are a sponsor of the Mercedes team, and that did actually affect Mercedes yesterday in terms of their computer systems. I don't think it affected them like massively, but it meant for probably not the smoothest, I think, Friday practice days. So, yeah, I think we need to account for that as well when it comes to how Mercedes were yesterday. Haas looking good. Kevin Magnussen up in the top 6, and funnily enough, up in the top 6 a day after it has been announced that he is not going to be in that car next year, which of course is no surprise at all. Lewis Hamilton in P7, not too far behind his teammate on pace, but given this is probably one of his best tracks in terms of his historical results, maybe you could have expected Hamilton to be ahead of Russell, but as we've seen this year, George Russell over a single lap has been clearly faster than Lewis Hamilton. Daniel Ricciardo in the Racing Bull looking good. Albon in the Williams looking good as well. Alonso in the Aston Martin, I mean, in the top 10, but I don't think Aston Martin really have great performance here. And then the rest of the field, you've got Bottas and the Sauber. Sauber we'll go on to later with upgrades, because they definitely are a team to look out for, put it that way. And then you've got Logan Sargeant 12th, pretty impressive from him. Only, I think, less than a 10th away from Albon in practice 2, which is about what you would hope from Logan Sargeant. Oscar Piastri was in 13th. Don't quite know why Piastri was so slow yesterday, but as I said, in practice 3 was only half a 10th behind Lando, so whatever it was, it's not a permanent issue that's going to affect him this weekend. Esteban Ocon 14th. Alpine, I have to say, very surprising in how slow they've been so far this weekend. Hulkenberg 15th, bit surprising. He was, quite a bit slower than Kevin Magnussen in practice yesterday. Then Gasly 16th, Stroll 17th, Leclerc 18th. Leclerc had a crash though in practice 2, that's why he ended up in 18th place. Tsunoda 19th and Zhou Guanyu in 20th. Zhou also had not a crash, but a very big spin in practice 2. But let's get into the sector times just to understand where certain teams are quick and not so quick. The first sector, obviously, we'll touch on, but to be honest, it's not really that important, the first sector at this track. The second and the final sector is really where you make your money. around this Hungaroring circuit. Nevertheless, McLaren quickest by half a tenth ahead of Ferrari. Not really a surprise. Ferrari are decently quick in this sector, given how much higher speed it is compared to the other parts of the track. Alonso third in the Aston Martin, and then you got Zhou in the Sauber, and then Hülkenberg, Sargent, Ricciardo, Perez, Hamilton, and Gasly. One thing I will say with these first sector times is because you've got, the pit straight and obviously a DRS straight, and then you've got a flat out section, from the exit of turn 3 going up to the end of the first sector. I think it does show that Red Bull and Mercedes definitely yesterday were holding back a bit in terms of their performance, because you would expect them to be easily in the top 5 in the first sector, and they're going to be today in qualifying. So yeah, Red Bull and Mercedes yesterday definitely holding back, not holding back a ton of pace, but holding back definitely a bit compared to what they showed yesterday. But the middle sector arguably is the most important sector, but I think really the middle and final sector as important as each other. The middle sector does really show who has a really strong car around this track, but the final sector, very important in keeping the tyres alive. Of course, the tyres do get an absolute pounding around this track, even on a qualifying lap. So in the final sector, again, crucial to keep the tyres alive, to make sure you actually finish a lap well, because you can be looking great after the first 2 sectors, but if your tyres fall off a cliff in that final sector, then you'll end up destroying your qualifying. We've seen it here before where, drivers have not had a good final sector and it's ended up costing them 2 or 3 positions on the grid. So, yeah, in terms of the middle sector, Red Bull ahead of McLaren by almost a tenth of a second. Not really a surprise through the middle sector. Mercedes then in third. And yeah, top 3 teams in the middle sector. Again, not a shock whatsoever. Racing Bulls, though, very, very impressive for them to be, just under a tenth away from Mercedes and not that far away from Red Bull in that middle sector either. So Racing Bulls got some good grip this weekend. Sauber also looking pretty decent. Williams as well. And then you go down, you've got Haas, Aston Martin, not competitive at all, which is really indicative of just how far they've fallen in 2024. Because downforce-wise, they just haven't improved that car, as we know. And that's why they've really fallen off into the position they're in. And then you've got Ferrari, second worst team in the middle sector yesterday. Now, I think it was a bit better for them in practice 3 in the middle sector. But the middle sector is really where Ferrari are losing the majority of the time to the absolute front runners being, McLaren and Red Bull. And that is really the difference between Ferrari and those absolute front runners. And it shows that Ferrari are, they're just, at the moment, I would say too far away to fight with teams like Red Bull and McLaren. Because when you're giving away in, a 27.5 second sector, you're giving away pretty much 0.4 of a second. You can't hope to compete with teams like Red Bull or McLaren when you're giving away that much lap time in a sector like the middle sector, which is so reliant on you having, lots of downforce, which Ferrari at the start of the season they did, but not anymore. So, yeah, this is a clear indication as to where Ferrari have gone wrong and still are going wrong with their car. And then Alpine, worst team in the middle sector. Again, I'm confused by that. I would have thought they would have been right really where Sauber and Racing Bulls are. For them to be 0.2 of a second away from Racing Bulls is, quite surprising. Maybe they, just didn't have the right setup yesterday. Maybe that was it. I don't know, but clear issues there for Alpine. And then the final sector, Red Bull looking very good in the final sector. Actually, I would say surprisingly very good in the final sector. And not only were they quickest, but quickest with their second best driver, Sergio Perez. So yeah, looking very good for Red Bull. Their Racing Bulls as well, very, very nice in the final sector. McLaren are looking good as well. Sauber, pretty decent. Ferrari, better, but still not enough. Mercedes, I really would expect them to be at least half a tenth better off in the final sector, so definitely can find a bit more in this final sector. And then you've got Haas, Williams, Aston Martin and Alpine. Aston Martin and Alpine definitely should be lapping at a better speed. But overall, coming out of, practice 2 yesterday, and also what we saw from practice 3 today, in terms of the pecking order, it's not really that much different from what we would have expected coming into the weekend, given what happened, a couple of weeks ago at Silverstone. Red Bull and McLaren, I would say, are bang on level on pace. I think it's too close to call, really. I know McLaren were very quick in practice 3 and Max was like 2 or 3 tenths off, but I do think Red Bull will close that gap in qualifying. So yeah, Red Bull and McLaren, like I say, too close to call. They're definitely the 2 best teams. Mercedes, I think, have definitely got the 3rd best car. As they showed in practice 3, they've definitely got a better car around this track than Ferrari do. And then I'd probably go Ferrari 4th. And then 5th best, it's hard to say. Haas and Racing Bulls look very, very close to each other on performance. I'd probably, in qualifying trim, I'd probably have to say Haas. But again, it is very, very close between those 2 teams. And then after Haas and Racing Bulls, you'd probably say, what? Again, it's hard to say. You've got, Aston Martin, Williams, and Sauber in that next group, and it's too close to call even between those 3. And then at the minute, Alpine do look like they have the slowest car on the grid this weekend. So that is, I think, exciting that we have, most of the grid, it's too close to call in terms of where people are exactly. And that's exactly, of course, how we want it. But of course, I did have to come up with a prediction for qualifying, and this is what I've come up with. So Max Verstappen, I think, will take pole position just about by a couple hundredths of a second ahead of Lando Norris in the McLaren. Oscar Piastri will be just behind in 3rd. George Russell, then I'm going in 4th. Lewis Hamilton 5th. Perez in 6th. And then Leclerc 7th. Sainz in 8th. Hülkenberg 9th. And Yuki Tsunoda in P10. Again, it was hard, really hard to do this prediction because I think there's lots of areas of the grid where it could be dramatically different. And I'm fully prepared for my prediction to be very, very wrong. But yeah, I think Max will just get the job done on that final qualifying lap, as we've seen him do multiple times. And as we've seen lately with McLaren, they've got a very quick car, but in terms of delivering the result they should, they're not very good at that right now. And that's my concern with McLaren going into this session, is that whilst their car is very quick, can they actually deliver, that pole position that you could say is very much on for McLaren? We'll have to see, but I don't think they will. I think Verstappen and Red Bull just about will take it. Let me know in the chat or in the poll. Also, make sure to smash the like button. Let's try and get the likes up if we can to like 20, 25 plus likes. That'd be great if we could do that. And make sure to keep your comments coming as well, because I will make sure to get to you guys soon enough. But before we go on to your comments, let's get into some upgrades, because there's been, 6 different teams that brought upgrades, and a couple of them have brought a lot of upgrades. So let's get into them. So Red Bull, I've got a new rear corner, new front corner, and a new front wing. And also have, I think, reshaped the engine cover, I think, cooling areas that they had, that I think you may have seen earlier in the season. They redesigned those. And they were able to do that under a, I think, circuit-specific upgrade were Red Bull, and they've done that once again. But yeah, looks like they've reshaped it. So this is pretty much Red Bull's, I would say, biggest upgrade of the season so far. And if it does work, then Red Bull really need to be getting pole and winning this Grand Prix. But we'll have to see whether that's actually possible. For Mercedes, new rear corner, but again, small upgrade. We're just waiting for their next big upgrade, which is either going to be, maybe next week. Probably, though, the Dutch Grand Prix, when we come back from the summer break, I would imagine, is where they'll bring that next big upgrade to try and get right on pace with Red Bull and McLaren consistently moving forward. Ferrari have a new floor body. Small upgrade. I think Ferrari is just trying to revise certain parts of their car to try and make things, no pun intended, flow better. But it still isn't working. The car is not responding in terms of pace. It's just, there's no, that pace that was there 2 months ago is not there. It just isn't there anymore. And it's a very sad situation, I have to say. At the Scuderia, Aston Martin have brought a big upgrade, and really Aston Martin are hoping that this will be the turnaround in their fortunes, this upgrade. A new floor body, new halo, new floor fences, floor edge, new diffuser, and a new beam wing. If this upgrade package does not work, then, I mean, it's hard to say their season is over because, they're fifth in the championship. But in terms of them being a regular point-scoring team, if this upgrade doesn't work, then they are going to struggle to score points for the rest of the season. Because we've seen Haas F1, they've had a big upgrade lately and have improved massively. Racing Bulls, I mean, they had an upgrade a couple races ago that didn't quite work, but they have improved on that in the last week or so. So, they're getting better again. So, things are going to get very difficult for Aston Martin if this upgrade really doesn't work for them. And so far, doesn't look like this upgrade is doing anything for their car. But again, qualifying is where it really matters, so we'll wait and see. For Racing Bulls, new rear corner for them. And the final team is Sauber, who have brought not a completely new car, but this is their big mid-season upgrade that they're hoping will take them from being last in the championship to hopefully being able to fight for points on a regular basis. They have got a new rear corner, new side pod inlet, new engine cover, new floor body and edge, new rear suspension, new halo, new mirror, and a new headrest. If this doesn't work, then Sauber are going to finish last in the championship, and it really does have to work. Valtteri Bottas was pretty competitive in practice yesterday. I think 11th he was in practice too. So maybe we've seen signs that they have improved a bit. But again, qualifying is where we're really going to see the real evidence as to whether they actually have improved quite a bit. And you would hope, if you were Sauber, that you would improve quite a bit with this amount of upgrades by at least 2 or 3 tenths of a second, you would hope. So yeah, we will see what that does for the Sauber Formula 1 team. But let me just go back to the main screen and get the countdown back up. And I'll put the countdown back up in a second once it ticks over to the next minute. But what I want to do, before I get to your comments in the chat, is I just want to give you guys a content update in terms of what my plans are for the next week or two. There you go. There's the timer back on screen. Hour and 5 minutes to go until qualifying begins in Hungary. The F2 sprint race, by the way, is going on at the moment. All over the place. It's the F2 sprint race. Not quite sure who is looking good here at the moment because lots of different drivers on different tyres. But yeah, just want to do a quick content update. So the plan for this weekend, oh god, had a bit of a frame drop there. Sorry if that affected the stream a bit. If that keeps happening, by the way, I'll make sure to play around with the settings so that doesn't keep happening. But yeah, I just want to do a content update for the next couple of weeks. So for this weekend, what I can announce is obviously today I'm doing a qualifying watch along, but tomorrow I'm afraid I will not be doing a race watch along. But what I instead will be doing is a podcast episode reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix, which will come out either late on Sunday night, early Monday morning, something like that. And then for next weekend's Belgian Grand Prix, instead of doing a qualifying watch along, I am going to do a race watch along. So I'm going to split it up, if you will. So qualifying watch along for this weekend's race, where qualifying is way more important and obviously a lot harder to overtake at this track. And then next weekend for the Belgian Grand Prix, I will not be doing a qualifying watch along, but I will be doing a race watch along. And also next Friday night, I will be doing a qualifying preview stream just so I can inform you guys as to, qualifying and what I think will happen in qualifying and all of that stuff. So yeah, after today there'll be podcast episode, say within say 20 hours or 24 hours after the race finishing tomorrow, reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix. And then next week again, next Friday, the day before qualifying at Spa, I will do a qualifying preview for the Belgian Grand Prix, and then on the Sunday a race watch along that I'll try to get a nib on for. Of course, we haven't done a race watch along together, I think since the Australian Grand Prix, which was 4 months ago. So I'll try to get him back on. And then after that, I will do probably a podcast episode reviewing the Belgian Grand Prix, and then another podcast episode, say a couple days after that, where I will do my mid-season review. So between now and a couple weeks from now, there should be a decent amount of content on the channel. Stream today, podcast in a couple days, and then next weekend 2 streams on Friday and Sunday, and then on Monday a podcast reviewing the Belgian Grand Prix, and then a couple days later another podcast, doing a mid-season review. So that's what, including today, that's 6 pieces of content in the next 2 weeks. And I do also have some plans for the summer break as well, which I'll get into probably next week when I have more so finalized dates and stuff like that. Yeah, just wanted to update you guys about that. So yeah, if you are wanting race watch alongs on the channel, don't worry, they will be coming back. They'll be back next week on the channel. But yeah, for this weekend, I'll just be doing the qualifying watch along, and then missing the race, and then doing a podcast review, which will come out sometime on Monday, probably early, like I said, Monday morning, something like that. As absolute chaos going on in this F2 sprint race, as we've had 3 cars just go off track trying to overtake each other. But yeah, let's get on to your comments in the live chat and see what you guys have to say going into qualifying. And as well, I wanted to say thank you to anyone who commented on my community post from a couple days ago, where I asked you guys for questions for my next podcast recording. If you haven't put any questions there and you want to, if you go to my community tab and you go back like 2 or 3 days, you should find a community post from me where I said, I want to hear some viewer questions from you guys. And then, if you go comment on that post, a question, F1 related question, then I'll answer that on my next podcast recording, which will be for the Hungarian Grand Prix. So, if anyone did ask a question on that post, then that question will be answered on the next recording, which will be uploaded on Monday. But, right. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Laurie Rastogi says Perez has the potential to be good. He just needs to unlock it. Well, that's the thing, which is frustrating, especially for me as someone who likes Sergio Perez. That is absolutely true. Perez has always had the potential to put in good performances. I mean, look at a couple years ago in 2022, where in a Red Bull car that was probably about similar performance in terms of how quick it was compared to the next best car, Perez was regularly finishing on the podium. And now 2 years later, he can't even get near the top 5. So the potential is clearly there. There is no doubt about that. But I think, he has struggled with the balance of the car, which is more so favored towards Max, which, there's no problem with that. Max is the better driver. But I think also he's got too comfortable as Perez at that team. And I think that's a big issue as to why he as to why, say, this season he's been so poor, because obviously it was announced earlier this year that he had been renewed for another year for 2025, and at that point he just didn't show any performance because, I mean, he didn't really have to. There was no, incentive, let's say, for him to really show any performance because he already, had the contract for next year. But now we are seeing, rumors that he is possibly going to be dropped before the end of the year for, maybe Daniel Ricciardo, maybe even Liam Lawson. We've heard rumors of in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Suddenly Sergio seems to be stepping up his performance level. So I think that also, again, hasn't helped with Perez. As absolutely crazy finish, by the way, to this F2 sprint race. From, I think, 10th down to like 17th. They're all side by side through basically every corner. I think there's a group on fresh tyres trying to overtake a group on old tyres, and that's why we're getting so many overtakes. But if you're wondering who's won the sprint race, Richard Verschoor has won the sprint. Kushmaini has finished second, and Victor Martins has finished in third. As Behrman and Antonelli have finished 11th and 15th. But anyway. KH, can Racing Bulls get top 10 in qualifying? Yeah, I think they will. Whether it's Tsunoda or Ricciardo, I mean, it's hard to predict. I went with Tsunoda because Tsunoda, for me, is a little more reliable in that team. But yeah, I think they can. As long as they deliver their best laps, I don't see why they can't. The car is, as probably this weekend, the car's been the most competitive it's been in probably since the Canadian Grand Prix, which is good to see because I was worried they were going to drop off permanently. KH says Ricciardo is driving for his career. If you said that a few races ago, I would have agreed. But at the minute, I'm not sure I agree with that because, all the things we're hearing coming out of Racing Bulls or Red Bull, they sound good for Daniel Ricciardo. So I wouldn't say he's racing for his future at the minute. I mean, needs to keep putting in good performances if he's going to be a Racing Bulls or Red Bull Racing driver next year. But it doesn't feel at the minute like he's definitely going to lose his spot. KH windy conditions for qualifying. Looking at the track, maybe a slight wind, but not that big, not as big as you would get at Silverstone, for example. And yeah, it is overcast, if you're wondering, in Budapest. There is a chance of rain, but it's only, I think, like 30%. Yeah, there is rain in the area, but I don't think it's going to come for the track. But yeah, there is a slight bit of wind, but it's not really that big, to be honest. Astro says Joe would need a miracle second half of the year to keep his seat now too. Maybe the upgrades will help him. Maybe, but we'll have to see whether they do. Astro says even if we get an amazing grid, Chazza, yeah, even if we do, I'm not gonna be streaming tomorrow because, as I said, overtaking at this track is just not really that easy unless you've got a massive pace advantage. And yeah, I don't think we're gonna get, because of the weather conditions we've got for tomorrow, which are gonna be hot and sunny probably, or sunny and cloudy, but still very hot. I think it's going to be more of a tyre management race, to be honest, than a proper helper leather type Grand Prix. But like I said, definitely will be live for the race at Spa, which I think guarantees to be a good race. Brabham saying, I'll take him with Chaz's channel tomorrow and will attempt my best Chaz accent. Pranksters, who is this guy? Chaz, you've been missed. Cheers. Astros asks, think poor chair will ever get an F1 seat? Maybe Sauber, as someone else on YouTube suggested. I mean, it's still a possibility. I mean, at the minute, in terms of who Sauber are going to put in their car for next year, it's more dependent on, obviously, who Audi want in the car, because obviously Audi take over in 2026. Audi have been trying to get Carlos Sainz in their car, but for some reason, Carlos Sainz still won't sign with anyone. I think with Sainz, I think what he's doing is he's waiting until Mercedes and Red Bull have officially decided who their driver lineup for next year is, and then he'll make his decision. But the thing is, if if Mercedes and Red Bull take another few months to decide, and they decide not to go with Carlos Sainz, and then Sauber decide to go with someone else because they're sick of waiting, and Williams decide to go with someone else because they're sick of waiting, then Carlos might not have a seat next year. Or if he does, it'll be probably, Haas, which will be a massive drop down for his career. So he needs to be really careful, does Carlos, because if he doesn't get this next driver move right, it could destroy his career. It really could. So he really, I think by the time we come back from the summer break, I think really he needs to have decided what he's doing. Because there is that possibility that he may end up in an even worse situation purely by waiting. And, these teams like Audi, Williams, that are interested in signing him, they're not going to wait around forever for a possible signature. They're not going to wait around until December or January. So, yeah. A decision needs to be made, I think, pretty soon. By Carlos. But yeah, in terms of what you were talking about with Théo Pourchaire, if Audi do not sign Carlos Sainz, then yeah, why not go with Teo alongside Nico Hulkenberg? I do think Teo is. I mean, he's Teo is definitely good enough to deserve a chance to prove himself in Formula One, but I think he will be good enough for Formula One if given the opportunity. So yeah, we will see. Carlos Sainz, once he makes his decision, then I think it will sort out the midfield seats pretty quickly. And obviously, another team he could race for next year is Alpine. There's been rumours about that Carlos is going to go to Alpine, which I do not think would be a good career move whatsoever. Um, Laurie says, Paul Chair, no doubt in my mind, should be given the Sauber seat this year. Brabham says, I can't see Lawson getting the Red Bull seat way too early considering he's only done 5 races. I agree. I think if he comes into Formula 1, he needs to be in the Racing Bulls car rather than the Red Bull car. But hopefully Lawson does get on the grid because he already proved in those 5 races that he's good enough. Let me see if I can find some other comments here. Make sure to keep them coming, and I'll keep reading them out. Astro says it's pretty clear for whatever reason Yuki won't get promoted, so why are they keeping him on? I don't know. Not really fair, given he has raced so well. It's because, and I think I've explained this before. I can't remember if I have, but I'll explain it again. The reason they put Tsunoda in the car in the first place back in 2021 was to appease Honda. If Honda were not partners with Red Bull back then, Tsunoda would not have got in that car. And then obviously once Honda have, that relationship's ended, they've kept him on purely because he's doing a good enough job for the team. And yeah, I think at this point they just keep him on because he does a good enough job for the team. But yeah, they've got no plans of putting him in the Red Bull car, even though they should, because he's already proven that he deserves the chance to to be in that Red Bull car. But if they haven't given him that chance yet, I don't think they ever will. Because, Yuki Tsunoda for the last, year and a half has been very impressive. We've continuously shouted him out, said how well he's performed. But Red Bull don't care. And it's sad, but, that's the way it is, unfortunately. But my hope is, of course, with Aston Martin partnering up with Honda for 2026, my hope is that Yuki Tsunoda will get into that team. But you've got the immovable object being Lance Stroll. So whether he actually will race for Aston Martin, who knows? But as long as Tsunoda remains on the grid, that is important because, he's easily good enough. Laurie says, if I was Sainz, I would go straight for Audi. I would as well. Mercedes and Red Bull, even though, yes, they haven't officially decided what their lineup is going to be, I don't think they're going to go for Carlos Sainz because Red Bull have already said that, they don't want the Verstappen Sainz dynamic at their team because they had that at Toro Rosso and it wasn't really, in terms of the relations between the inside Toro Rosso, it wasn't great. I think because of the the fathers, really, of the two drivers. So Red Bull, they don't want that again. And then with Mercedes, you know, they've got the task of trying to replace Lewis Hamilton, and the only driver that, in terms of talent, they can replace him with and not lose out massively is obviously Kimi Antonelli, who's on their books. And I do think that Antonelli will be in the Mercedes car next year. And if that does happen and Red Bull go for, I don't know, Verstappen Perez or Verstappen Ricardo driver lineup for Red Bull next year, then yeah, Sainz, his options are what? Audi, Alpine, Williams, and Haas. And for me, clearly, you have to go for Audi because they are the only team out of that pack that are possibly going to win the championship in the future. Because, Audi, they're going to put in a shit ton of money, resources, all of that. And Audi, we've seen their track record with other motorsports. They've been very successful in all other forms of motorsport. So signing for Audi wouldn't exactly be the worst decision in the world. But one important thing to remember is, obviously, at the moment, we are wondering what the destination will be for a certain Adrian Newey. And there are rumours that Adrian might go back to the team where it all started. Well, not where it all started, but a team that, he worked for when he was quite a bit younger. Williams. That is one of the rumours, that Williams are in contention to sign up Adrian Newey, which, if Williams were able to do that, that would be incredible. That'd be a truly incredible signing. But if Williams somehow pull off that move, then surely for Carlos Sainz, you've got to get yourself in that car. But if Adrian doesn't go there, then yeah, Audi it must be. Let's see if I can find some other good comments here. What about Behrman? Behrman's already confirmed for Haas, which is good. Astro says Sainz should go to Mercedes. I reckon him and Russell would be a good pairing there. I think direct swap for symmetry too. I mean, if Mercedes don't decide to put Antonelli in their car, then yeah, putting Carlos in the car for a couple of years wouldn't be a bad decision. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they'll throw Antonelli in there. Laurie says Bottas likely to go to Williams. Apparently, I have heard a couple rumors about Bottas and Williams, but I wasn't really sure as to how serious they were. So yeah, we'll see. Astro says, I hope Haas get someone other than Ocon with Behrman. Personally, Ocon doesn't play nice with teammates. I think Bottas or Sainz would be better there, maybe even Sonoda. Personally, I think, what do you call it? Bottas and Behrman at Haas would be a good lineup. I think that would suit the team nicely. Valtteri, is still, I think, is Valtteri good enough to be on the grid still? I think you could still ask those questions, but I think he has not been helped this year as Valtteri by the car, so I think we have to, factor that in. But he's still good. He's still driving at a good level with Valtteri. He's a great team player. He's very laid back guy. I think he would get on well with the vibe of the Haas team. And I don't think would really be too much trouble for Behrman. And also for Oliver Behrman, it would be great for him to have Valtteri as a benchmark because, of course, Valtteri, even though he's not as good Bottas as he was when he was Lewis Hamilton's teammate, he was still Lewis Hamilton's teammate. And if Behrman partnered up with him and Behrman destroyed him, that would really give Behrman confidence knowing that, he was able to do to Bottas what Lewis Hamilton did. So, yeah, we will see what they decide to do. But that's another driver that, we need to see who or where they end up is Esteban Ocon. I think Ocon, there's a good chance he will end up at Haas, but who knows? Who knows? Silly season is in full gear. Kamajitsu says, I just can't believe that Carlos is higher up the pecking order than Valeri. I don't know if you're trying to say Valtteri there. Laurie Rostogi saying, I heard Aston Martin were interested in Adrian. Yeah, there's Aston Martin have shown clear interest, but whether Adrian is actually going to go there, who knows? The teams that are rumored to be in for him are Ferrari, but those rumors have dwindled quite a bit. But McLaren, Aston Martin, Williams. So, how great would it be if he went back to McLaren? That would be great. Or even if he went back to Williams. Seiragara, good to see you, mate, says this Ocon teammate thing is overblown. In my opinion, most clashes with Perez were Perez's fault. I'd say it was 50-50 between Ocon and Perez. I wouldn't say it was really a majority anyone to blame with those incidents, but yeah, there you go. And then Brazil 22 was Alonso's, and Australia 2023 was Gasly at fault. The thing is, though, is there still has been too many instances of Ocon getting together with teammates and him being responsible too much, let's say. It's not that he's been at fault for every single get together with a teammate. It's that, he's had too many of those incidents, let's say. But yeah, keep these comments coming. Let me know what you think is going to happen for qualifying, and let me know how you think the driver market is going to play out. Because yeah, for next year, the Ferrari driver lineup is sorted. I think Aston Martin's driver lineup is sorted, but everyone else pretty much is up in the air. And obviously, McLaren as well, they're sorted. But yeah, I think everyone else still, again, up in the air as to what their lineup is going to be. Let me see if I can find some other comments that I haven't read. Laurie Rostogi says, Ocon is a decent driver. There are drivers slower than him, I think. His positives outweigh his negatives. Yeah, I agree. The teammate thing is not a good thing, and I do think that, he isn't the most trustworthy driver when it comes to racing his teammate. But Esteban Ocon is definitely good enough to be in Formula One. On his day, he is clearly, I think, one of the top 10 best drivers in the world. Is Ocon. So, yeah. Yeah. If Ocon ended up off the grid, it would be quite travesty, put it that way. But of course, happened to him before, didn't it? In 2019, where he got shafted for Stroll. As just watching Sky F1, there are some umbrellas about, but I think it's just spitting with rain. I don't think there's any actual proper rain hitting the track. So it should be a dry qualifying session. Again, I think it's just spitting with rain. And given how hot it is at the track, light rain is just going to burn off the surface. So, yeah. But yeah, let me try and read a couple more comments, and then I'll post a link of the stream out again before we move on. Ferrari is sorted, says Todd. Yep, they are. Hello to Music Monster Man. Good to see you. Laura Stoker says, to be fair, Stroll has been good recently. Trouble is, over the course of a season, he's average, really. That is true. Last few races, Lance has been, compared to Alonso, he's been driving well, but I feel like with Fernando, the reason he's been underperforming is more because he's just so unhappy with the car. Because, I mean, start of the season, Fernando was driving so well, was one of the top, few performers on the grid. And then once the Aston Martin car seriously dropped off in performance, Alonso has just been all over the place. And I have to say, as we've got Leclerc in the Ferrari on screen, very similar to Leclerc at Ferrari, where up until the Monaco Grand Prix, most of the time, Leclerc has been, more competitive than Carlos Sainz when the car was good, car felt good, drivers were happy. But since that Grand Prix, Leclerc has not been the same driver, and it's because he doesn't have the confidence in the car anymore. And when you lose confidence in the car, you leave a lot of lap time on the table. But, if you don't have the confidence in the car, what can you do? But, yeah, let me just post a link of the stream out one more time before we get underway for qualifying, which is in just over half an hour from now. So I'll just post this link out quick. Come join us. Watchalong qualifying. Hungary. As we await a multi-driver battle for pole position. There you go. So, yeah, probably for the next, 15 minutes or so, I'll keep reading your comments, and then we'll go through the teams before qualifying. I'll just do a quick roundup in terms of what I'm expecting from the teams. And also we'll go through some stats for the top teams before the session itself. But yeah, let's see your comments. Nicholas says, how do you think about Ferrari next year and in 2026 with Lewis Hamilton? If you'd asked me 2 months ago how I was feeling about Ferrari for next year, it would have been a completely different answer, to be honest. But yeah, at the minute, I am not feeling good when it comes to Ferrari for next year, because they've once again created issues for themselves. And the issue, it appears, it's not just, the upgrades for the car just don't work, but I think the fundamental issue with the car is around the suspension. I need to do some more digging into it to really, to really understand what the proper issues are. But it's to do with the suspension area. And I think it's to do with the type of suspension they went for 2024. And I don't know if it's that, that suspension setup means that whatever upgrades they're put on just don't mesh with the car. I don't know. Again, I need to do more research into that, but I believe it's a fundamental issue combined with again the poor upgrades. But in terms of the next year, I do not have good hopes for Ferrari next year. I think 2026 I've got better hopes, but that's really more out of just guesswork because we don't know in 2026 who is going to be the quickest or the slowest. We have no idea what's going to happen in 2026. But I mean, 2025 the regulations are the same, and given how the pecking order is currently, you'd have to say next year it's probably going to be a 3-team battle between Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes, unless Ferrari next year fundamentally change their car for the better. But whether they do or not, who knows? It's a wait and see process. But yeah, I'm not feeling great about Ferrari next year. I'm feeling a lot better, I have to say, about McLaren next year than Ferrari in terms of a possible championship bid. Brabham also says McLaren has shafted Piastri a good portion of the season, not the other way round. I mean, at the last race at Silverstone, yeah, McLaren fucked Piastri over, leaving him out a lap too long because he ended up wasting a pit stop because he was right behind Lando when Lando pitted for intermediate tyres. And then when Oscar pitted, Lando was right behind him. So yeah, a pit stop wasted. And I think I said it in my podcast review that if Oscar had pitted on the same lap as Lando, yeah, he would have wasted probably 3 or 4 seconds, double stacking, but wouldn't have lost anywhere near the same amount of time, and probably Oscar probably would have finished on the podium at Silverstone, may have even finished second. Not sure he would have won the race, but definitely would have been on the podium, given that he finished the race on the better tyre, the medium compound tyre, as opposed to the soft tyre that Lando went for. Rooks asks, has anything come out regarding damage to Leclerc's upgraded floor engine gearbox after crash on Friday? I haven't heard anything about penalties or damage to the upgraded floor. I haven't heard anything, to be honest. So yeah, but as I said earlier, this slightly new floor doesn't really seem to have made any difference so far for both drivers. So yeah. So regards as Piastri's doing good at most, not great. KH says Piastri's having a solid year, 5th in the points. Hopefully can get a win this year. Yeah, Oscar, he's what? 50 or 48, 47 points, something like that, behind his teammate in the championship. I think Oscar, the only thing you could ask is maybe he could be, say, 20 points closer to Lando. But other than that, I can't really sit here and say, that Oscar has been, not good enough. I think Oscar's had a good season. He just hasn't, he hasn't hit some of the heights that Lando has. But, I mean, you saw in practice 3, only half a tenth away from Lando in practice 3. Was very close to Lando in practice 1 as well. So his pace here is looking good. And as long as he can remain that close to Lando, then he'll be probably minimum top 3 on the grid. And then if anything happens between Lando and Max, then Oscar can maybe come on through and, I don't know, grab second or win the race. Who knows? But yeah, I think what Oscar is missing, because Leclerc has won a race, Sainz has won a race, Norris has won a race, Russell's won a race, Hamilton's won a race. That's what Piastri's missing, is that race win. Which, to be honest, if it wasn't for that, what was it? Was it a penalty got in Austria in qualifying? I think it was. If anyone wants to correct me on that, you can. But I think, wasn't it in Austria that Oscar got a grid penalty? I think, and then that, in hindsight, ended up costing him the race win, because with what happened with Lando and Max, if that had happened and Oscar was in third, where he was the whole weekend, without that penalty, Piastri would have won the race. So yeah, he just needs to get that race win. Once he gets that race win off, gets that, I guess, that burden off of his back, then I think you could see Oscar continue to rise in the championship. But I think at this rate, I think you could probably argue that Oscar Piastri is likely to finish in the top 3 of the Drivers' Championship. He just needs to stay consistent and keep up his strong pace, and I think maybe he'll get a race win. I mean, there's definitely circuits coming up on the calendar where I think Oscar could be competitive enough to end up winning. I mean, remember next week at Spa? Remember, he was very strong at Spa last year. Obviously, Qatar, he was very good last year, so that's another Grand Prix venue that he might be able to take victory at. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Let's see if I got any other comments there I can find. Hello, Crystal Racing, by the way. Good to see you, mate. Laurie says, hard to believe Piastri is that far off Norris. Norris is better in every area, though. He is better, Lando, in every area, but it's not by much. Lando just has that extra special something, that extra bit of pace that Oscar consistently doesn't have yet. But I will remind you that Lando, in his first couple years in F1, was kind of similar to Oscar, where he showed shades of absolute brilliance and had some really amazing results, performances, but he wasn't doing it consistently, and obviously was being beaten by Carlos Sainz. But then in year 3, Lando stepped up a gear and became the driver that he is now in 2024. So maybe next year, especially if McLaren start next year with the championship winning car, maybe Oscar will just elevate to that next level and be right there with Lando, maybe if not better. We'll have to see. But yeah. Let's read a few more before we go back onto the teams. Yeah, that's what it was. Bravram saying it in chat. Track limits, but they couldn't really show a definitive picture of all 4 wheels off. Yeah, it was turn 6 or something where he went through the gravel, I think, slightly, but technically he had all 4 wheels over, so they deleted his time, even though he didn't gain anything from going all 4 wheels over. That was the point of complaint. And yeah, if it wasn't for that, Oscar Piastri would have won the Austrian Grand Prix. But if buts and maybes at the end of the day. But yeah, if he could just keep up say, the form that he's had the last couple weekends, where he's right there in the mix, not quite ahead of, Lando and Max, but in the mix and ready to capitalize, and eventually his opportunity will come. Because, even though, maybe he's had some bad luck here and there, sometimes you do need to make your own luck and be in position to capitalize on other people's misfortune, which, unfortunately, in Austria, he couldn't do that. But, like I said, if he consistently, keeps himself in the top 3 on the grid for the rest of the season, he surely will get that chance. Brabham says, would be interesting to see a second-year Oscar versus second-year Lando. It would. I think people would be surprised at but yeah, if that obviously did happen. Obviously it can't happen because we don't have a time machine. But I think Oscar would probably win that battle, if I'm being honest, as it is continuing to rain at the Hungaroring, but again, it is light rain. So once it stops, the track should dry out very quickly. Let me just have another look at the radar. And yeah, I think it's just very light rain at the moment, but it should stop in the next few minutes or so. And Brabham saying, and absolutely true, Oscar's greatest strength is how calm he is. And yeah, that will really help him in the future for any possible championship bid. But yeah, we'll see how Oscar gets on in this session. He was very strong here last year, I remember, with Lando. They were very close on lap time. So I'm expecting it to be close again between Lando and Oscar. But we have got just over 15 minutes to go, guys, until qualifying. Keep your comments coming, because I will keep reading off a few more before we get to the session. But before I do, let me just go through the teams quickly and have a look through the teams and just quickly round up my thoughts as to how I think all the teams will do in qualifying. For watching, if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Let's try and get up to 50 plus likes if we can. That'd be great. And as well, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. But let's get into the teams. Red Bull looking strong, but maybe not the favourites for pole. I think maybe you could say McLaren are the favourites for pole, given what we've seen so far. But Max in that Red Bull still looks very strong. Red Bull don't have any clear weaknesses from what I've seen so far. And it is going to be a straight shootout between Red Bull and McLaren in terms of who gets pole position. I'm favouring Red Bull just about, but it is going to be so close. Sergio Perez, though, we'll see if we can keep up his improved performance so far this weekend. And he really needs to if he's going to help Red Bull at all this weekend. And, of course, in the Constructors' Championship, because Red Bull, even though they're leading in the Constructors, they're not a million miles ahead of the teams behind. Ferrari, still not looking good. Not really a surprise. This is not really the track for them. Yeah, Ferrari in quite a bit of trouble with their car. Not on the level of Red Bull and McLaren. By the looks of it, just a bit away from Mercedes as well, and looking closer to the midfield than they are to the very front of the grid, which is just truly indicative of where Ferrari are right now in 2024. And I guess you'd have to say their main battle is to make sure they get both cars ahead of all the midfield runners, but also try, if they can, to maybe get a car ahead of a Mercedes runner. If they can do that, then that would probably be a better than expected qualifying, but I'm not expecting really that much today. For Mercedes, unfortunately, they just don't have the pace of McLaren and Red Bull at this track. Not really a surprise. This track just doesn't suit their car as much as I think Silverstone did, and also a couple tracks before did. Bit too high-speed corners here. I mean, I know Silverstone has, your high-speed corners, but I think this is a bit more aerocentric, let's say, than Silverstone, and Mercedes still struggling to a degree when it comes to that. So Mercedes, I think their aim has got to be just getting both cars in the top 5 of the grid. If they can do that, I think they'd be satisfied with their result. And yeah, for McLaren, they have topped all the practice sessions so far this weekend, and pole position is absolutely there for them to take. No excuses if they don't get pole. I'm not saying they're the clear favourites, but if they don't get pole, they can't say, well, Red Bull are just too good, because I don't think Red Bull have got the type of pace to be clearly ahead of McLaren. Lando Norris is looking very good. Oscar Piastri looking very good. It's going to be a very close fight between Verstappen, Norris and Piastri for pole. For the midfield, Aston Martin, they've got a load of new upgrades, but we're not seeing anything of them so far, so we'll see what happens in qualifying for them. The pace they've shown so far has not really been that good at all, so my hopes for them are not really high. Racing Bulls look a bit better. Ricciardo in the top 10 in practice 2 yesterday. Tsunoda as well in practice 1 in the top 10, so Racing Bulls looking good. Watch out for them, as this has been the most competitive they've been in a few weeks. Alpine, surprisingly poor so far. Maybe they've got a bit more in the tank in qualifying, but yeah, they just haven't really shown enough performance in this Grand Prix weekend, and I think are likely to have at least one car knocked out in Q1. Williams, I've got to say, have been a bit of a surprise. In practice 2 yesterday, they had both cars in the top 12 of the grid. Logan Sargent was looking very strong as well. Can they keep that up? We will see. These wet conditions we're seeing at the moment, say more damp conditions, maybe that will help them in qualifying, at least the early part of qualifying. But I would be very surprised if Williams got in the top 10. I don't think they've got quite good enough a car to do that. Sauber, massive upgrade package for them, and this is a great track to see whether that upgrade package has worked, and we will see whether it does work. If they get a car in the top 10, then clearly it has worked for them. Of course, remember how good they were last year here. They locked out the 3rd row of the grid. They do that again this year, I think they'll be ecstatic beyond belief, because this year it looks way less likely for that to happen. And finally for Haas, obviously been the in-form midfield team in the last couple Grand Prix, and still look very competitive. Nico Hülkenberg, watch out for him. He's been very strong this year, especially in qualifying, and I think he'll be right up there once again in a very quick Haas car. And here's a reminder of my predicted top 10 for qualifying. I think it'll be Max Verstappen on pole, just about from Lando Norris, with Piastri 3rd, Russell 4th, Hamilton 5th, Perez 6th, Leclerc 7th, Sainz 8th, Hülkenberg 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda in P10. And let me just get the timer back on screen. One more time. There you go. And yeah, the drivers just getting into their cars now. And yeah, the session looks like it's going to start off wet. And when I mean wet, I'm talking intermediate tyres. But I don't think it's going to be wet for that long, because it looks like it stopped raining. And again, it is very hot in Budapest, so it should dry up very quickly. So really, it should be a majority dry session here in Hungary. KH says if Ferrari get their groove back with Hamilton, Mercedes needs to improve. Red Bull and McLaren to beat top teams next year. Possibly. We'll see. Nicholas says, yeah, I mean, for next year, maybe we could have a three-way battle for the championship like in the Cars movie. not sure about that. Between Max Verstappen, Lando, maybe George Russell, maybe Leclerc for 2025. Say Regara says Russell, Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, and Norris top 5, I think. Of course, we must remember Mercedes-Benz were a big shock 2 weeks ago in qualifying at Silverstone. We did not expect them to not only get pole position, but lock out the front row by a decent margin ahead of Lando and Max in the Red Bull. So you never know. Mercedes might once again turn up and blow the field away. Remember, Mercedes have taken pole position in the last 2 Hungarian Grand Prix. Russell, of course, took pole in 2022. Hamilton took pole last year in 2023, but they both failed to win. Mercedes haven't won this race since 2020, where they absolutely dominated the weekend. As, yeah, the team's just getting the cars ready. But, yeah, I think what we'll see is them start on inters for qualifying. And then I think by the end of Q1, I think definitely they'll be on dry tyres. Because I think the track will dry out dramatically quickly. Ruxford says Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Sainz, Russell, their top 5. Crystal Racing says Russell, Norris, Max, Hamilton, Leclerc. Is there any more predictions? Don't think I can see any at the moment. As I can see Lando Norris looking out onto the pit straight before he gets into the car, just to see how wet the track is down the pit straight. But of course, that poll in the chat will keep running as to asking you guys who you think will take pole. I'll keep that running for the next 45 minutes or so until the start of Q3, of course. Astro says Piastri pole ahead of Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Ricciardo in 5th. But right, let me see if there's any other comments I've not read that I should read quickly. And don't think there's any others. But yeah, this should be a very exciting qualifying session, no doubt about it. Will it be as exciting as Silverstone? Maybe not. But it's going to be a very competitive fight for pole, no doubt about that, between at least 2 different teams, which is the bare minimum of what we want. As very large crowd at the Hungarian Grand Prix, a Hungarian Grand Prix that does see a lot of British and people from different parts of Europe attending this Grand Prix, because it is a lot cheaper to go to the Hungarian Grand Prix. So if you are British and you want to go to an F1 race, Hungarian Grand Prix is financially is a better event, I would say, to go to, because financially it's just a lot better off compared to Silverstone, which didn't sell out, thankfully. And hopefully that sends a message to the people running Silverstone that, the rip-off ticket prices that they charged this year and have been for the last couple of years will not be tolerated any further, because they weren't able to sell out sell out the race, as there were some empty seats around on the odd grandstand. As the F1 intro now begins to play. So, let's see if there's one final comment I can read. KH saying, love to see Piastri on pole, would be great. And Astro saying Max could crash out in Q1. Probably won't. Very unlikely. I know that strange things do happen. Well, maybe you have just tempted fate there. But before we get to qualifying, let's just go on to a final couple things, important things before the session. Firstly, championship standings. Max Verstappen, 84 points clear of second place Lando Norris. There is not a championship battle going on. Max is going to win the championship this year, but if he wants to first solidify his lead, then of course pole position important today. Norris is second, Leclerc third, only 4 points clear now of Carlos Sainz in fourth. Oscar Piastri up to fifth, only 26 points behind Leclerc in third. Perez in sixth, Russell seventh, Hamilton 1 point behind now in eighth. Alonso ninth, and Lance Stroll just about has crept into the top 10. And then on the constructor side, Red Bull are 71 points clear of Ferrari. Ferrari only 7 points clear, though, of McLaren, who you would expect to overtake them in the championship after this weekend's Grand Prix. Mercedes in fourth, a lot closer to the teams ahead of them, of course, after winning the last Grand Prix and the Grand Prix before that. Aston Martin in fifth. Racing Bull sixth, only 4 points clear of Haas, who are the most informed team in the midfield. Alpine in eighth. Williams in ninth, and Sauber still pointless in 10th. But for the big teams, let's go through the key stats for them going into this session. Max Verstappen has only taken pole in Hungary once, and that was in 2019, a brilliant pole position, one of his best in 2019. Can he get his second pole today in Hungary? And that pole for Max is Red Bull's only pole in Hungary since 2015. And Max has took pole at 2 of the last 6 races in 2024. Not a great record, but of course on the Sunday, he has still been delivering the goods. For Ferrari, their last pole position in Hungary was in 2017 with Sebastian Vettel 7 years ago. Doesn't feel that long ago. Ferrari, they've taken pole in Hungary only once since 2015, which was in 2017. And still have not qualified inside the top 3 of the grid since Monaco. For Mercedes, they took pole position, of course, at last year's Hungarian Grand Prix with Lewis Hamilton. And if they do take pole today, it will be 5 poles in a row at the Hungaroring. Mercedes have taken pole in Hungary 6 times since 2015. And Lewis Hamilton has taken 8 poles in Hungary, of course, including his days at McLaren. And talking of McLaren, their last pole position in Hungary was in 2012 with Lewis Hamilton, and McLaren looking for their second pole position of 2024. But Q1 will be underway in just a moment. Of course, an 18-minute long session. I'll sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark. And yeah, this is going to be a good one. As McLaren, I think they just showed on the broadcast, drawing out their pit box. As Mercedes are about to let one of their cars go, and probably going to be on the intermediate tyres, I'd imagine. As we now look at, on the TV broadcast, Charles Leclerc. Well, no, not Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, who had some decent results here in Hungary in the past, but never really has been, super quick here. I don't think he's ever been on the podium in Hungary. As the Haas there of Nico Hülkenberg has come out on soft compound tyres, and looks like the two McLarens are as well, so clearly the teams think it is still dry enough for dry tyres. we'll find out whether that decision is correct. As looks like Max Verstappen is going to be released from the pits very soon. But the session has started. We're about 30 seconds in. Obviously, at the end of this session, whoever the bottom 5 are below that dotted line on my screen, they will be knocked out and will start the race in those respective positions. But yeah, it looks like F1 on the dry tyres. And if it doesn't rain again, which I don't think it's going to, looking at the weather radar, then it should be a dry session. But that little bit of rain, it does just wash, maybe not all of the rubber away, but, you know, enough of the rubber away to make this a interesting session. So, there you go. Timer on screen. Bottas saying track is okay for slick tyres. So, yeah, all good. And to be honest, I'm more thankful that it is going to be a dry session because I think we're in for probably a more exciting session in the dry than we probably would be in the wet. As the cars slowly come out onto track. Coming down the pit straight is a Haas, who I think has just started his first flying lap. A bit further back behind him is, I think, Valtteri Bottas. As we're looking at Lando Norris, who's just getting out of the way of the Finn. But remember, the best lap time of the weekend so far, a 1:16.0, which Lando Norris did in practice 3. Pole position should be between a 1:14.8 and a 1:15.2, let's say. Anywhere between there is where I think pole position will be today, at best. As Hulkenberg completes the middle sector, a slow middle sector, about 3 seconds off the pace. So clearly the track, not in the greatest condition. It's good enough condition for dry tyres, but it's not at its best. As Nico Hulkenberg goes quickest on a 1:20.5, 4.5 seconds slower than the best time of the weekend. But as each car crosses a line, it should get faster. So really here, it's all about who crosses the line last to finish their lap, because they will have the access to the most amount of grip. As it's Magnussen first, Bottas second, Gasly third, Tsunoda now goes quickest. So Tsunoda, Magnussen, Bottas, Gasly, Zhou. As Ricciardo goes up to... As Alex Albon now puts himself up to the top, with his teammate Logan Sargent going quicker. And Logan Sargent now on top. As Piastri has done a purple middle sector, not that much quicker than Sargent, as Zhou on the radio is saying rain is increasing. So maybe a bit more rain coming down, but I'll be honestly surprised by that. Thought the rain would have passed. But Oscar Piastri comes to the line and goes quickest. And Lando Norris goes a 1/4 of a second slower than the Australian in second place. So, and Carlos Sainz goes a 1/4 of a second quicker than Piastri. And Sainz is now on top. As Lewis Hamilton has done a purple first sector. Max Verstappen has only gone 5th. So it's Sainz, Piastri, Norris, Sargent, Verstappen. Perez is 6th. Alonso, who's normally great in these conditions, has gone up to P7. With Albon 8th, Ocon up to 9th. As here comes Lewis Hamilton. 10th and a half quicker than Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton goes quickest on a 1:17.0, 1 second off the best lap time of the weekend. So, not too bad of a lap time considering the track conditions. Yellow flag in Sector 1. Not sure who for. As Valtteri Bottas comes up to the line and goes up to P12. But thankfully, it goes green again. But it is currently Hamilton, Sainz, Piastri, Norris, Sargent, Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Albon, and then Ocon in 10th. And then Tsunoda, 11th. Bottas, 12th. Stroll, 13th. Magnussen, 14th. Russell, 15th. And then Leclerc 16th. With Ricciardo 17th, Hülkenberg 18th, Gasly 19th, and Zhou 20th as George Russell improves, but only goes to 11th position as Alex Albon goes up to 8th. So a poor session so far for Mr. Saturday, who rightly took all the plaudits a couple of weeks ago. What a brilliant qualifying he had at Silverstone. As, that's what the yellow flag was for. Massive double lockup by Sargent going into turn 1 and ended up going into the barriers. Thankfully got going again, but that would have broke his front wing and destroyed his front tyres. And yeah, it just broke way too late. And tyres might have been a bit cold as well. So, yeah, thankfully he got going again. He's up in 6th place currently. As Alonso goes up to 4th. Verstappen does a purple middle sector, only 0.02 of a second quicker than Hamilton. As Leclerc rounds the final corner, and Leclerc only goes 9th. So like Russell, not a good start to the session. As here comes Max Verstappen to the line. And Verstappen goes up to 3rd, exactly 0.2 of a second slower than Lewis Hamilton, as his teammate Sergio Perez is now coming through the final couple corners. Ricciardo improves to 15th place. Tsunoda improves to 11th. Perez stays in 8th. That's a lap wasted there for Sergio Perez as Pierre Gasly on a good lap. And this might put Gasly into the top 15, which is what he needs. And his teammate behind on another better lap. As here comes Pierre Gasly, DRS open. And Gasly goes all the way up to 11th place. Brilliant final sector by the gas man. But his teammate behind is on a better lap, and Ocon might sneak into the top 10 with this lap if he keeps up his speed. As George Russell on another lap. As Ocon out the final corner, and Ocon does get into the top 10 by almost 1/10 of a second ahead of Albon in 11th. As we're now looking at Russell, who has backed off. I have no idea what's happened to him, but we've got 8 minutes to go in Q1. And yeah, Ricciardo, Stroll, the two Haas's, Magnussen and Hülkenberg and Zhou in the drop zone. That's why Russell backed off, because he went deep at turn 8, I think that is, just after the chicane. And Russell into the pits. So he's going to have to make sure on his new set of tyres that he bangs in a good lap, because he's under some pressure, is Russell, in 14th place. And, of course, he doesn't want to get caught out by the weather. But F1 on the grandstand is not bothering with umbrellas, so it looks like it's definitely dry. As Lando Norris on an improved lap. So is Leclerc. As Lando comes out of the final corner, where will he go? He doesn't improve. He stays in 6th place. So I think these soft tyres of Lando have seen their best day. Leclerc's, though, have enabled him to improve, as Leclerc goes up to 8th. Has got a yellow flag in sector 2, and it's Sergio Perez, red flag. He's done it yet again. He's binned it in the barrier at turn... Where is that? I think, is it turn 8? It looks like he's spun the car and then gone right into the barrier. And we saw this. Was it Silverstone or Austria? I can't remember exactly, but the pressure was on for Perez to deliver, and once again, he's put it in the barriers. What an absolute embarrassment from Sergio Perez. So here we go. Up to turn 8 and 9, the chicane. And that, well, so no, he turns into turn 8 after the chicane, which is turn 6 and 7. Turns in, and the rear end just completely steps out. And then spins around and bang, straight into the wall. And he is finished. And that might be the finish of his Red Bull career. And if it is, don't think you can blame Red Bull, because they've given him plenty of chances this year. But that, all too often, is the end result. So we've got a red flag. 6 minutes and 45 seconds remain on the clock. Plenty of time left for the drivers to get out there and get some runs in. But yeah, that's just, again, pathetic. And you may say, oh, well, you know, it was more the car's fault, you know, the rear end stepped out. But, you know, why is Perez driving that aggressively? Why is he throwing the car into turn 8 that aggressively when he doesn't have to? He's in the top 10. He's in a Red Bull. There's still a few minutes remaining in the session. You know, it's like I said at Silverstone, and obviously Silverstone was a couple of weeks ago where, you know, pressure was on and he put it in the wall at Cops. And I said it there, he just needs to let the car do the work. But here, I think, was just too aggressive. I think he came off the curb a bit, which may be a bit damp, which might not have helped, but he should not be that aggressive at this point of the session. It's not the final lap of Q3. It's, you know, halfway through Q1 in a Red Bull. There is no need to be that aggressive. But maybe that's what happens when the pressure's on. As they're just removing Perez's car. Hopefully the barrier isn't damaged. I don't think it is. In terms of it being damaged to the point where they need to delay the session even longer. The Woden says, easy to rag on Perez, but the team should have told him that Russell just had a moment there. I don't think they need to tell him that. I mean, he should be. I mean, he's experienced enough to know that, you know, the track is still a bit damp. No need to push that hard. Again, when you're in a Red Bull in Q1, you just need to make sure you just get the car through to the next part of qualifying. That's all that matters. But yeah, Perez, unless it rains for the rest of Q1, then yeah, Sergio Perez is going to end up starting last again. And won't get very far. KG Blaze says, you cannot tell me Red Bull have given... you can't not tell me that Red Bull have given Perez a shit car on purpose. I mean, put it this way. Even if they have, there's no excuse for making mistakes like that. You know, that's a simple error. It's a simple error. Should not be happening. And it's, you know, it's irrelevant as to whether how good or bad the car is. I mean, you know, it's not the worst car on the grid, is it? So, yeah. Laurie says Perez is so bad in any wet conditions, to be honest. At the minute, I think you'd have to say yeah, but I mean, this is Sergio Perez we're talking about, a driver that in the past has produced some of the best performances of his career in wet or changeable conditions. I mean, you know, Malaysia 2012 obviously is the famous example. Obviously, Monaco a couple years ago, won for Red Bull. Yeah, there's been plenty of wet or wet dry races where Perez has been brilliant, but the Sergio Perez we're seeing currently is not the Sergio Perez we saw, you know, between 2011 and 2022. But yeah, Perez once again binning it, and he can't blame anyone else but himself, I'm afraid. But yeah, the session under a red flag, 6 minutes and 45 seconds to go, and I will sync up the timer at the 6 minute mark once we get there. As Anthony Davidson on the Sky F1 Skypad is just examining why George Russell has not had a good start to the session. And I mean, Russell, he kind of, you know, he had a moment in that corner as well, but it wasn't like he wasn't as aggressive with the car as Perez. And what Perez did was he exited the chicane, obviously got on the curb, then got off of it, and then as he entered turn 8, got back on the curb, which again is probably a bit damp, and then turned in from the curb. You can do that in the dry 90% of the time, and it's fine. But in damp conditions, it's not a risk worth taking. So yeah, poor mistake from Perez, I'm afraid. As session will resume in, I think, 3 minutes time, it says. According to the weather radar, there is a big amount of rain coming for the track. So if that is true, then these teams are going to be back out on track immediately to try and improve on what they've done. Especially, obviously, the bottom 5. As Some interesting characters in the stands in Budapest. We're seeing on the broadcast end. But I'll be honest. I'm surprised the weather has taken a turn for the worse, like it has, because coming into the weekend, the forecast was that it's going to be, the hottest Grand Prix of the year, and it was going to be, just very, very hot. So, yeah, it's quite the surprise that coming into today, I didn't expect us to be talking about wet weather and all of that stuff, but we are. Um, Red Bull only 60 points in front of McLaren in the constructors. Well, that is not true. Red Bull are, I think, it's 80 points ahead of McLaren, or it's around 80 points. But after this weekend, it's that gap is probably going to go down to 70 or just under 70 points. And McLaren have said that their aim is to win the Constructors' Championship, which, I mean, at the minute, given how Perez is performing and how McLaren perform on a regular basis, it's not impossible. They do gain on Red Bull every race by just a few points, as the session has restarted and the two Saubers immediately get back out on track as they need to try, and as Russell comes as well, they need to try and improve, as looks like the rain is starting to come down now, so I'm not sure if any more improvement can be found, but I mean, we will see. But I've missed the syncing up point, so I'll make sure to do it in a minute at the 5 minute mark. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, currently in the drop zone, Ricardo, Stroll, Magnussen, Zhou, and Hulkenberg. But the only cars that have come out on the track are Russell, Bottas, and Zhou, which I think tells you that the teams think it's too wet at the minute, and maybe for the rest of the session, to improve. As the Sauber there got the rain light on. But Zhou is going to try and improve, even though doesn't look like he's necessarily got the grip to be able to. And DRS not enabled by the looks of it. And yeah, Zhou is not going to improve on this lap, I don't think. Look at the way the car's moving. It's just nowhere near the same amount of grip, I think, as before. They need to hope it stops raining, and then magically they can maybe start improving. But yeah, Zhou 2.5 seconds off the pace in the first sector compared to Valtteri Bottas. So yeah, at the minute it is too wet to improve, which for George Russell is a blessing in disguise, because it means that he doesn't have to really bother about trying to improve, because if the track's too wet, the track's too wet, and that means that it will finish this way. As yeah, Russell saying on the radio that the track is still very damp. As yeah, Russell lapping about 6 or 7 seconds off the pace through the first couple sectors. We've got other cars on the track now. Hamilton, Sainz, Albon. But, yeah. It's, I mean, there's no real point getting out there to try and do a lap because, again, it's just too damp. But if the weather, if it continues in this vein where 1 minute it's raining and then literally the next minute it's not, it could lead to a very mixed up grid. As Russell does a much better first sector than he did before, but still not quick enough. And yeah, this looks better for Russell, but again, the lap time still isn't there because track's still too damp in places. Well, he has done a personal best middle sector, has George Russell, which is good to see. As Zhou has actually improved his lap time, so looks like the track just about now has improved enough for final improvement, which actually may cost George Russell, who goes 11th, because if the track is now dry for the rest of Q1, Russell actually went 10th. If the track remains dry for the rest of Q1, he just did that lap on a set of tyres a couple laps old. Everyone else is going to be on tyres that are a lap younger, and obviously the track will be better conditions. So Russell, even though he's improved up to 10th place there, he might be in quite a bit of trouble if he can't improve any more on those tyres. It's going to be very, very close, and we really could see a shock. As we're currently looking at Lance Stroll, who is in the drop zone and is going to attempt to get through to Q2. The DRS still not enabled, which is hurting the driver's lap time through the first sector. But again, it's the middle and final sector which really matters at this track. Stroll wiggles his way through turn 2. And let's see what the first sector is like. It is a personal best, which is good to see. As we enter the final 20 seconds of Q1, can Ricciardo, Stroll, Magnussen, Zhou or Hülkenberg find their way into Q2? As Verstappen has just done a purple middle sector out there. Here comes Stroll, who does a very good middle sector as Verstappen improves up to second. And actually sets the exact same lap time as Lewis Hamilton. A 1:17.087. Ricciardo does a good middle sector. As now F1 starting to improve. Leclerc up to 4th. And Lance Stroll improves all the way up to 4th place. What an improvement. Is that enough to get him into Q2 as Daniel Ricciardo goes quickest? That's definitely good enough to get Ricciardo through, as the checkered flag has now fallen. These are your final laps. Alex Albon up to 5th. Nico Hülkenberg from 20th to 6th. As Sonoda goes 8th. And George Russell's in the pit lane, and he's also now in the drop zone. Because, who else has improved? Hold on. As Kevin Magnussen now goes up to 15th, which pushes Sergio Perez out. But Valtteri Bottas has improved and gone up to 10th. Kevin Magnussen has gone 15th. And that means that, yeah, Perez and George Russell both out in Q1. What a surprise early on here in qualifying. But let's go through. Now that Q1 is finally done with, let's go through the drivers that have made it through to the second part of qualifying. Daniel Ricciardo, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, Nico Hulkenberg, Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc, Valtteri Bottas, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, Logan Sargent, Kevin Magnussen, and knocked out in Q1, Sergio Perez, George Russell, Zhou Guanyu, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly. Quite a headline for eliminated drivers there. Yeah, a Mercedes and a Red Bull have already fallen victim. And that is really going to please the midfield teams like Williams, Racing Bulls, and Haas, who know now that they've got a proper chance of a good result now that Perez and Russell are out of the running. Russell, by the way, knocked out in Q1 for the second year in a row here in Hungary. What an awful session. And I literally said, didn't I, guys, that that improvement he made up to P10, it was too early. And his tyres, he'd used up the best of his tyres. And then when everyone else improved, he couldn't do anything about it. So I called it. Mercedes sent him out too early. They should have sent him out a couple minutes later and he would have been fine. But there you go. But yeah, Q2 underway very shortly. Again, make sure if you are enjoying the content to smash a like button. We're on 47 likes. Let's try and get up to, let's say, 60 plus likes if we can. That'd be great if we could. And if you haven't already, make sure to vote in the poll in the live chat, where I've asked you who will take pole position today in Hungary. Will it be Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, or Hamilton? And the poll looking very close between Verstappen and Norris. So make sure to give your opinion, because it could end up being the deciding vote. But yeah, a Red Bull and a Mercedes already out. And I think definitely Racing Bulls, who have been competitive with both cars, I think they are going to be very excited now for the rest of this session, because I think they probably think they can get both cars into Q3, which would be a great effort. As George Russell saying on the radio, sorry about the session, it's on me, which, I mean, in terms of the laps early on in the session, definitely that's on him, but I do think Mercedes did fuck around with the strategy there. And Russell actually saying on the radio, why are we not putting enough fuel in the car to complete the session, guys? So Mercedes, even though, yeah, Russell could have done a better lap earlier on in the session to help himself, I think Mercedes could have also helped him later on. So just, yeah, a big failure there between team and driver. But that's Q1. Now we wait for Q2, which will be underway very shortly. And we will see if we get another surprise elimination. But it will be interesting to see in the midfield who ends up getting through. As we look at Lando Norris on the broadcast. McLaren didn't really feature that strongly in that session. I think they only did really like a couple flying laps that weren't really that good. But of course, the best lap time we saw in Q1 was what, 1:16.9 by Ricciardo. That is still almost a second slower than the best time of the weekend. So, I think as what's going on here, a change of tyres at Mercedes. Don't know if they're putting Inters on. Maybe that's why they're changing tyres at the last minute. We'll have to see. But the session has now started. As we're looking at on the broadcast, Logan Sargent's Williams. Sargent did a pretty good job to get through. As we are looking at on the track, a Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Also on our end, on our broadcast, Carlos Sainz. I do think out of the front running teams, Ferrari are the most at risk of losing a car here in Q2. Because in normal conditions, I think Ferrari do have the slowest car out of the top 4 teams. So it's not impossible that Ferrari will lose a car here in Q2. As there you go, 14 minutes remain in the second part of qualifying. As the tyres on for Lewis Hamilton. And he just waits for when he can get out there. There is Valtteri Bottas, who did actually get in the top 10 in Q1. As now we watch Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. And you never know, this could be the best time of Q2 for Carlos Sainz and for anyone. Because if the rain comes down in a couple minutes, then Carlos will be laughing. As he comes through turn 3 and 4. Or not turn 3 and 4, turn 2 and 3. Now up to turn 4. And we'll see how close he can get to a low 1 minute 16 with this lap. As the Ferrari have had some issues this weekend, visible issues. The rear end has been all over the place. Been like a stripper on the dance floor in terms of how much it's moved through the high-speed corners, and that's not what you want. And that's the difference between the Ferrari car and the, say, McLaren Red Bull. Is the McLaren Red Bull is, well, the rear end is stable, which is why those drivers have the confidence they do in their cars. When the Ferrari drivers definitely are not confident in the current Ferrari car, as Carlos Sainz does a 1:17.0, which is the best around about the best time we saw in Q1. So still not that quick. But the best time on the board at the moment nonetheless. As we now look at Lewis Hamilton, the Mercedes. 8 poles he's took in Hungary. Can he get number 9 somehow today? He's outqualified his teammate, which is good news. And maybe with Russell being knocked out in Q1, like he was last year when Hamilton got pole here, maybe that's the omen Hamilton needs to do it. As almost everyone on an outlap now. We're now looking at Max Verstappen. Surprisingly poor record in qualifying here, Red Bull and Max. Yeah, only 1 pole here in the last 10 years at this track. As Lewis Hamilton Braking hard for turn 1 as he begins his first Q2 attempt. And you'd expect him to go quicker than Carlos Sainz. Through turn 2. Takes a tighter line through turn 2. So better front end on that Mercedes. And a tenth and a half up he is in the first sector on Carlos Sainz. So very good start for Lewis. Verstappen about to complete the first sector in a moment, so I'll tell you how he does when he gets there. And Verstappen, very good first sector, almost 4/10 up on Sainz, and a quarter of a second better than Hamilton. So very good first sector for Max. As Lewis, half a second up on Carlos through the middle sector. So that time of Carlos Sainz is going to really fall down the order. As Lewis Hamilton comes through the final corners. Max nearly a second up on Sainz now for the first 2 sectors. Lewis Hamilton does a 1:16.5, but Max Verstappen behind is going to go way quicker than that. And may even do the best time of the weekend so far. As Max Verstappen, here he comes to the line. And yep, a 1:15.7, and that is a brilliant lap time here in Q2. Considering, some of the rain we've had here and there, that is a brilliant lap time. 1:15.7, have that. As Oscar Piastri, though, does a purple middle sector and almost at the same pace as Max. So McLaren are responding as Bottas goes 4th, Hulkenberg 5th. Magnussen goes up to 3rd on a 16.7. Very impressive lap time. As Piastri, 0.015 of a second slower than Verstappen. Piastri 2nd. Lance Stroll has just gone 3rd for Aston Martin. And Alonso now goes 3rd. So Aston Martin out of nowhere, showing a turn of speed. Alonso, 16.1 for him. As Logan Sargent is up in 9th place now, splitting Bottas and Hulkenberg. Yuki Tsunoda goes up to 7th place. As Lando Norris is coming through the final sector now. Lando has not done a purple sector yet, which is surprising. As Albon goes 11th. So Logan Sargent currently ahead of his teammate. Lando Norris to the line. Half a second back on Max. And on his teammate as well. And Lando Norris only goes 4th. As here comes Leclerc through the final corner. Can he do better than his teammate? Yes, he can. Goes up to 5th. So Leclerc is up to 5th. Daniel Ricciardo, by the way, still in the pits, has not done a lap time as Carlos Sainz back out on track. Presumably on a new set of tyres. And he's done a purple first sector. And his middle sector, only half a tenth slower than Verstappen. This is a very good lap so far from the Spaniard. Who has qualified in the top 3 on the grid here before, back in 2022. As Carlos to the line. What's the lap time? It's a good one, a 1:15.8, and it puts him up to 3rd. That's a very good lap time from Carlos Sainz. So, Verstappen, Piastri, Sainz, Alonso, Norris, Leclerc, Stroll, Hamilton, Magnussen, and Tsunoda on their way to Q3, and on their way out at the minute is Bottas, Sargent, Albon, Hulkenberg, and Ricciardo. But again, Ricciardo not set a lap time in this session. As good to see Nib in the chat saying Norris and Piastri on used tyres. Be interesting to know if Max was also on used tyres, but if he wasn't on used tyres, Max, then that is great for McLaren. As yeah, everyone is everyone? Yeah, everyone pretty much back in the pits now as we await the final run of Q2. And by the looks of it, the front running teams all look like they've probably got enough pace to get through to Q3. So really, it's between Magnussen in 9th all the way down to Ricciardo in 15th. Aston Martin, I've got to say, good turn of pace in that run. We'll see if they can keep that up. As we're looking at McLaren with Oscar Piastri in the garage. As they get some fresh tyres on that car. But it'll be interesting with Ricciardo when he gets out there on a set of tyres, fresh tyres. Be interesting to see whether he can get ahead of his teammate and sneak in to the top 10. As all the cars now pretty much being released. Kevin Magnussen looks like it about to be released. Magnussen currently in P9, actually having a good qualifying session for once. Which is something really he needed a long time ago, but too little too late. As, yeah, all the cars now coming out of their garages to get out on the track. As we're looking at on the broadcast, Charles Leclerc, 6th place currently. Should be okay. The two Ferraris on the lap time they have done so far to get through, unless there is a gigantic improvement in lap time by the bottom 5. So I've just remembered that I've failed to put the new cutoff zone on. So, sorry about that. Normally, I do that pretty consistently, but yeah, today I forgot to do that. Just remembered that the other cutoff zone wasn't showing. So, 2.5 minutes to go in Q2, and you can see now, thankfully, on the left-hand side of your screen, in between the two dotted lines, you got 11th to 15th place, and currently, the drivers on their way out of Q2, Bottas, Sargent, Albon, Hulkenberg, and Ricciardo. Will it remain that way? We will find out. As here comes Lewis Hamilton down the pit straight to begin his final run in Q2. Currently in 8th, and he should get his way to Q3. Be very surprised if he gets eliminated here. Saying that, he does have an oversteer moment at turn 2. I think turned in a bit too aggressively there. But still does a personal best in the first sector. Which I think, really struggling with the rear end through turn 5. But despite that, the lap time is still improving. So it shows you how much the track is improving. As Hamilton through turn 11, what's the middle sector like? It is not a personal best. If Hamilton doesn't improve this lap, Mercedes are going to be very much on edge. As Lance Stroll has done a good middle sector. as Hamilton through the final corner to the line. And Lewis Hamilton improves up to 6th place. Lance Stroll improves to P4. That will see him into Q3. As here comes Alex Albon to the line and goes up to 9th. Will that be good enough? No, I'm not sure it will. As Leclerc is improving. Logan Sargeant goes up to 10th. But again, I'm not sure if that is going to be enough. As Daniel Ricciardo, what an improvement. He goes up to 6th place. So not one improvement, but what a lap. He goes up to 6th. Leclerc improves up to P4. Lewis Hamilton might be in a bit of danger now because he's down to 9th. And we've still got the 2 Haas's out there who could improve. Fernando Alonso stays in 6th. Lando Norris goes quickest by a quarter of a second to a 1:15.5. Here comes Tsunoda. Can he wrestle this car into the top 10 to the line? He can. He goes up to 8th. And Lewis Hamilton is in serious trouble now as he's in the pits and we've got cars behind improving. Can those cars behind improve enough to dump another Mercedes out? Here comes Valtteri Bottas round the final corner to the line. And Bottas goes 11th by 0.077 of a second. Hulkenberg goes 11th. Magnussen stays 15th. And Lewis Hamilton, by the skin of his teeth, has got through to Q3. So, there you go. What a ending to Q2. I honestly thought Lewis Hamilton was in big trouble there. And he only got through, guys, by 0.010 of a second. That's how far Hulkenberg in 11th was from Lewis Hamilton. So lucky Mercedes, very lucky to get a car into Q3 there. But that's Q2 done with, guys. And your drivers and cars on their way to Q3 are Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo, Lewis Hamilton. Great job by Racing Bulls to get both cars in Q3. And knocked out in Q2, Nico Hulkenberg, Valtteri Bottas, Alex Albon, Logan Sargeant, and Kevin Magnussen. But yeah, Haas, they'll be disappointed not to get a car in the top 10 there. But yeah, Racing Bulls will be over the moon. But now it's all about Q3. And who will take pole? It's between McLaren and Red Bull. There is no doubt about that. Mercedes and Ferrari just don't have the pace. And maybe you still would favour Lando Norris. Maybe you would favour Max Verstappen because of his ability to deliver. More so on a final lap in qualifying. But yeah, this is going to be a great battle for pole. And like I said, I think a low 1:15, like a 15:1 or a 15:2, might just be enough. But if any of them are able to do a late 1:14, I think that will definitely be good enough for pole position. But yeah, let's see how this battle for pole will go. And hopefully we don't get any, red flags or anything that disrupt things in Q3. Thankfully, Sergio Perez is not in Q3, so the chances of a red flag diminish quite a bit. And also Zhou Guan Yu not in Q3, so again, chances of a red flag diminish quite a bit. But yeah, it is. It's too close to call for me. It is. I mean, McLaren, you could definitely argue have got the better car this weekend, but we saw at Silverstone, McLaren probably, even in qualifying, probably had the better car compared to everyone. But it's about delivering the lap when you have to. And Lando, he didn't do that at Silverstone. And you could argue it cost him dearly. But, yeah. And Q3 will start in 3 minutes' time. So we'll find out soon enough who will start the Hungarian Grand Prix on pole. But, the pole in the chat could not be any closer. 435 votes, and it is currently 36% for both Verstappen and Norris. So, yeah. I think what I'll do is I'll leave that poll running for another, say, 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll let you guys decide who will get pole in that poll. No pun intended. But, yeah. The top 3 should be really Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri in whatever order. And then after that, you've got battle with, Ferrari and Hamilton. Can Lewis Hamilton still out-qualify the 2 Ferraris? I think really for Mercedes' race tomorrow, they need desperately to be ahead of the 2 Ferrari cars. But then, you look at Aston Martin, they were a bit of a surprise in Q2. Could they upset the balance of things? And maybe this is a sign that Aston Martin's car has improved if they, do end up doing something like that. But, yeah. Just a patient wait now for the start of the shootout. Plenty of Hamilton fans and Lando Norris fans in attendance. Ferrari and Max fans as well, I'm pretty sure. And here comes Max Verstappen. Can he take pole for the first time in Hungary since 2019? As he's got a few cars behind him, as the session has now begun. And Max Verstappen will be the first on track. But also, another thing is obviously the weather could play a factor here, because if we do get a shower that lasts, 3 or 4 minutes, as Max being told on the radio, make that lack of a toe count, Max. There's again some motivational words there before his lap. But yeah, if we get a shower that lasts a couple minutes, that could really decide things, or maybe even, cause a massive surprise here. And according to the broadcast, rain is coming in 5 minutes. So it may all be about these first runs. And this is what I've been talking about with Lando Norris and McLaren is maybe, yeah, lately they've had the best car, but at the end of the day, if that is true, you've got to deliver on that. And the very best teams and the very best drivers deliver the results that are there on the table for them. Something that Max Verstappen has much experience of doing. And talking of Max Verstappen, he now begins his first attempt at pole position. As I've just finished up the poll in the chat, and I'll read out the results in a moment. As Verstappen coming through turn 3. And good first sector for Verstappen. Remember, the best time of Q2 was 1:15.5. As the Red Bull looks absolutely on rails through the middle sector. And superb through turn 11. And yeah, the poll, 444 votes. And Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, for you guys, were dead level on 36% as to who you thought would take pole position. Lewis Hamilton third on 20%. Piastri fourth on 6%. But here comes Max Verstappen. What's the lap time? It's a 1:15.555. I'm not sure if that will be enough, but we'll see. As here comes Oscar Piastri. Goes second, 0.3 of a second away, a 1:15.8. About the same lap time he did in Q2. Carlos Sainz goes third. Here comes Lewis Hamilton to the line. And Hamilton, he now goes up to third place. As now we've got Charles Leclerc coming up to the line. He now replaces Lewis Hamilton and goes third. Good lap for Leclerc. They're only 3.5 away from Verstappen, so that is definitely a good lap by the Monegasque. Fernando Alonso, what can he do? He goes fifth ahead of Carlos Sainz. Good lap. As Lando Norris has done a purple middle sector. Can he deliver the all-important lap now as he comes up to the final corner? And it looks good. Is it good enough? It is by 0.3 of a second. Lando Norris does a 1:15.2 and is on provisional pole as it stands for the Hungarian Grand Prix. What a lap. I told you a 1:15.1 or a 1:15.2 would be a really good attempt for pole, and that is exactly what Lando needed to do. And he's given Verstappen a mountain to climb for the final run, as Lance Stroll goes 8th. So we have got the first runs in according to the broadcast. Rain is still coming in 1 minute. But your current top 10 is Lando Norris, currently on provisional pole, Max Verstappen second, Oscar Piastri third, Leclerc fourth, Hamilton fifth, Alonso sixth, Sainz in seventh, Stroll eighth, Tsunoda ninth, and Ricciardo in 10th. There's a replay of Piastri having a bit of a slippery moment on the exit of turn 1. But, yeah, what a lap that was by Lando. And even if Max is able to do a final run without it being affected by rain, Max is going to have to do something incredible to get pole position. As now, as Lando comes in, there's already a couple cars on their way back out, trying to beat the rain. Can they beat the rain? And if they can, how will that affect things? Piastri, Norris's teammate, back out on track. And so is Hamilton and Sainz and Verstappen a bit further back as well. So what will McLaren do with Lando? Will they just gamble that the rain is going to not allow the track to be good enough to improve anymore and to keep him in the garage? What will they do? Looks like they're rushing to try and get him back out there. But of course, they need to give it time to refuel. As we're looking at Piastri here, 5 minutes to go in the final part of qualifying. To be honest, for Piastri, as long as he maintains at least third, I don't think he really should be that bothered if Lando gets pole. I mean, if Piastri can get on the front row, that would be great. But I think if Oscar, like I said, if he can at least hold third, I think that would be decent enough. Because obviously tomorrow going to be a dry, hot, long race. As Leclerc looks like he's going to be released soon, possibly from the pits. The two Racing Bulls cars already back out there. As Oscar Piastri on his final qualifying lap, you'd have to say. Can Piastri improve on third? He has a much better turn one this time. As Alonso being told very light rain in the pit lane. So this lap by Piastri, this might be the final lap that anyone can do. And Piastri does a purple first sector, half a tenth up on Norris. And if this is the final good lap that anyone can do, Oscar has got to give it absolutely everything. As he comes through turn 8 and 9, Carlos Sainz does an even better first sector. Piastri through turn 11. And it's a personal best middle sector, but it's not quite on the pace of Lando Norris. This might put him on provisional pole, but it also might put him on the front row. We'll have to see. Piastri into the final corner as Verstappen has done the purple first sector. Piastri to the line! And Piastri, purple final sector, but goes second a couple hundredths of a second slower than Norris. So close, yet so far, as Lewis Hamilton goes up to fourth. Carlos Sainz goes fourth now. Brilliant final lap by Carlos Sainz. Can Max Verstappen, though, take pole away from Lando Norris as he comes through the final corner? Max Verstappen, no, he misses out by half a tenth and stays in third place. As Yuki Tsunoda has had a big crash, and that is the end of the session. Well, is it the end of the session? Actually, no, not quite. Because the red flags have come out, and there's still 2 minutes and 13 seconds left on the clock. So if any of the other drivers out there have got a fresh set of tyres, it might not be over quite yet. Unless the FIA say that the session is over. But it is currently Norris and Piastri on the front row with Verstappen third. If that stays that way, McLaren probably can then win the race tomorrow. A front row would be critical for McLaren. Here's a replay. Tsunoda through turn 4 and turn 5. Crashed on the exit of turn 5. Just went too wide and lucky not to go over the barrier there. Just pushing way too aggressively there, Tsunoda. And thankfully, okay, but there's a lot of debris on the track. Don't know how the barrier is. But yeah, currently it's Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Sainz, Hamilton, Leclerc, Alonso, Stroll, Tsunoda, Ricciardo. Obviously, Tsunoda is out of the session now. As Tsunoda puts his head in his hands. But he shouldn't be, too disappointed. Yeah, he could have improved and maybe got improved a couple positions, but he's still ninth on the grid. But what is most interesting to me is, will the session resume? Because if other drivers out there have still got fresh tyres, then there is still enough time to do one final run if it's dry. Because there's 2 minutes and 13 seconds left on the clock. And obviously, a lap around the Hungaroring is 1 minute 15. So you could easily do an outlap in 2 minutes and get round and be able to start a final lap. So yeah, if the session will resume again, if they've got still some fresh tyres, the other drivers, then this session has not finished quite yet. As we're seeing cars. Is this live? Now cars queuing up at the exit of the pit lane already. Even though we've had no answer as to whether the session is going to resume again and when it is going to resume again if it does. But yeah, Tsunoda just pushed too hard, went slightly too wide on the exit turn 5 and then smashed into the barrier. So just a clear driving error, but yeah, hopefully Tsunoda doesn't need to start from the pit lane because he's currently heading for a top 10 starting position. But we'll see what happens with this, whether the conditions will allow for a final run. As I don't know what replay they were showing there. Now they're showing another replay of Verstappen. They're showing all sorts of replays now. And now Max Verstappen is getting out of his car. So I don't know if that's because the rain has started to fall, but there's still cars queued up at the exit of the pit lane. You've got the two McLarens, you've got Hamilton, you've got an Aston Martin queued up there, but Max is out of his car. And if they can get a dry run in still, Max might be in big trouble here. He might end up dropping down a couple positions. But will the session get going again, and will it be in dry conditions? We will see. But yeah, this could be a crazy end to what's been a pretty exciting qualifying session here in Hungary. Looney Classic says they're queuing to put pressure on the FIA to restart. Maybe. As Max Verstappen, funny to say that, he's currently at the weighbridge talking to the FIA president. I'm not saying he's, telling the FIA president, end the session, but yeah, Max clearly is done for the day. But that might end up costing him dearly. Unless maybe Max doesn't have any fresh tyres left. But we've still got a queue of cars at the exit of the pit lane. So, and there's no rain falling at the moment. So, yeah, who knows? And Norris might be on pole at the moment, but remember, Oscar Piastri only 0.022 of a second back. Might be another chance for Piastri to take pole here. As there is still rain in the area, but not as much rain as there was before. Yeah, it's at the minute, the waiting game, we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't really know what is happening in terms of, when will the session resume? Nib says FIA said they will restart, but have not given a time yet. Right. Well, that's great. Could have at least given a time, could the FIA. As for Verstappen, looks like he's off to the media pen. And Nib saying also that McLaren are saying rain in 5 minutes. Right, well, we nervously wait until we possibly get underway again. And, if we do get underway again, then whether we'll actually get some proper, dry running in, who knows? But the red flag has now gone away, interestingly, so we may get a message in a minute saying when the session will resume. But yeah, still, there you go. Session will resume in 3 minutes' time at 17:21 local time. Let's keep our fingers crossed that just for the next 5 minutes or so, it can stay dry. Because we may end up getting a real shock here. And again, Max Verstappen in third may end up dropping down the field by a couple places. Because fresh tyres around this track really do help a lot. And obviously, fresh tyres with the track in even better condition, if it's dry, could spell trouble for Max Verstappen. But if for McLaren, they just need to maintain where the position they've got. A front row lockout doesn't guarantee that they'll win, but they'll do well to lose tomorrow's race if they lock out the front row, put it that way. As Lewis Hamilton's actually got his gloves off at the moment. But we will be back underway in a couple of minutes. There's Daniel Ricciardo getting his gloves back on. He has another chance to improve and maybe get, well, you'd hope from his side ahead of his teammate. Maybe even ahead of one of the Aston Martins. Yeah, just really hope it stays dry, because we could get another dramatic twist in the tail here in Budapest. And yeah, another few seconds or so to go. And then we'll be back underway. And I'll sync up the timer, guys, at the 2-minute mark. That's, yeah, just another few seconds. And then that green light at the exit of the pit lane will go. And the first car that will take to the track will be Lando Norris. So there you go, green light on. And Lando Norris very slowly comes out of the pit lane. And there you go. 2 minutes remain in qualifying. Has Lando Norris secured pole? Or, like I said, do we have another twist in the tail? Will Piastri take pole and upset things? What can Ferrari and Hamilton and the Mercedes do? And where will Max Verstappen end up now he is, well, out and done with the session? As we look at Lewis Hamilton, who's, well, quite dusty there on the entry to turn 6. And we now look at, I think, Oscar Piastri, and track still looks dry. Doesn't look like it's, it looks like it's probably spitting with rain at worst. But here we go. Here comes Lando Norris. If he can do, Lando, a 1:14.9 or maybe a 15.0, then I think that will probably be good enough to take pole in Hungary. And here he comes through turn 1. Looking good. Now into turn 2. As his teammate Piastri has started his final lap. Alonso, by the way, also in the pit lane, so he will not be doing a final run here, as Norris does not improve his first sector. Is that because the track is too damp and Lando looks like he's backed off? If I'm being honest. As Carlos Sainz has come back into the pits. Has the rain started to fall at the wrong time for others, but the right time for Lando Norris? I think it may have. As Lando is coming towards the end of the lap and surely will come back into the pit lane. And I believe, guys, that is pretty much it. As we'll wait to see some other cars come in. Yep, Hamilton crosses the line, doesn't improve. Piastri coming in as well. So that's it. McLaren not only take pole, as well, Daniel Ricciardo, Ricciardo does improve. And Daniel Ricciardo goes up to 9th. Great effort from him. But not only do McLaren take pole in Hungary, they have locked out the front row. Something they have not done since 2008. That was the last time McLaren locked out the front row of the Hungaroring. That year they won the race with Kovalainen. Will they do the same tomorrow? Brilliant job by Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. McLaren, deservedly the winners in qualifying today. But yeah, Lando Norris on pole for McLaren, Piastri second in the other McLaren, Max Verstappen third. Not impossible for Max to win. We've seen him win from lower down here in Hungary before, but it's going to be difficult with how quick McLaren are looking. Carlos Sainz fourth, Lewis Hamilton fifth, Leclerc sixth, Alonso seventh, Stroll eighth, Ricciardo ninth, Tsunoda 10th, and then Hülkenberg 11th, Bottas 12th, Albon 13th, Sargent 14th, Magnussen 15th, and then Perez 16th, Russell 17th, Zhou 18th, Ocon 19th, and Pierre Gasly will be last on the grid. And yeah, what a qualifying we've had there in Hungary. And for the next few minutes, guys, give me your thoughts as to what did you think of qualifying at the Hungaroring, and who is your driver of the day today? I'll just start that poll up. Who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Hungary? And the options for driver of the day will be Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, I'll put Piastri in there, and also Daniel Ricciardo. So yeah, let me know who your driver of the day for qualifying is. For me, it is clearly Lando Norris. Brilliant lap. He's been brilliant all weekend. He's topped practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, and topped Q3. Can he get the race win tomorrow? If he has any plans of winning the championship, then he better. But also a reminder of what I said earlier, I will not be doing a race watch along tomorrow, but I will be doing a podcast review of the race, which will come out, I don't know, say 12 to 15 hours after the race finishes. And then next weekend, I will be doing, instead of a qualifying watch along for the Belgian Grand Prix, I will be doing a race watch along and also a qualifying preview on Friday night. So, yeah. But let's see what you guys have to say. And I'll read out a few comments. Not going to stick around forever because I am pretty knackered. Been live for 3 hours now. And as Ruxford has just posted in the chat, where he says, drop your question for the post-race podcast here. If you go to that link will take you to a community post that I did a couple days ago, where I asked, if you want to post any questions for my next podcast recording, then, yeah, post it there in the next, say, 28, 29 hours, 30 hours. And then, yeah, I will go through them all on stream, not on stream, but in the recording. Say regards as Piastri, driver of the day. Aston Martin upgrades, working for once. Maybe. I would like to see how they perform tomorrow, though. Aston Martin. I mean, they weren't that far away from Hamilton, Leclerc. So yeah, let's see how they perform tomorrow before we make that assessment. Vincent says probably pit lane for Yuki. Hopefully not, because he's had a great performance as well today as Tsunoda. Vince also saying driver of the day for Lando. Nice work. Astro saying voted Danny Rick driver of the day. Yes, I'm biased. I mean, you could argue he's driver of the day. Did a great job. Oliver says Sergio Perez should be removed from Red Bull. Horner is crazy if he keeps him on. Yeah, I think at this rate, probably. And maybe after the summer break, we will see a certain Australian make his grand return to Red Bull Racing. Astro says Perez future chances, should he retire like right now? If not, does he have any self-respect and pride? Should he retire right now? No. I'll probably get more into it in the podcast because obviously, tomorrow he's not going to finish in a great position. So yeah, I'll probably talk about it more in there. And plus, I think there is a couple viewer questions already that I've received regarding Sergio Perez. Hammerson Harris says Max going to win tomorrow. Like I said, it's not impossible, but you'd think if McLaren are a serious team, McLaren should at least win the race tomorrow. But at the start of the race, you never know. If Max can pass Piastri, then it's game on. Perez doesn't even look like a driver that Williams would want now, says Crystal Racing. True. His stock falls every single Grand Prix weekend at this rate. Yanni says Perez driving is making a lot of other drivers feel good about themselves. True. McLaren need to win. No, really, says Crystal Racing. Yeah, I mean, especially as well for the Constructors' Championship. If they can get first and third, then, that's 40 points. And then if Max finishes second and Perez finishes, ninth, then that's only 20 points for Red Bull. So that's, that would put them, 60 points behind? Something like that, which is not, it's not a massive gap to catch between now and the end of the season. Vince says Norris has been doing well on strategy, he has a solid chance. Laurie says maybe Paris is washed, but if he can get back to near his 2024, teams will want him. If buts and maybes, though, innit? I mean, yeah, if he gets back to that form, then yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure that people will be interested in him. But until he shows that, then there's nothing to talk about with Sergio Perez. McLaren 1-2 tomorrow, says Astro. I mean, McLaren look quick, but I don't think so. I think Max will finish at least second tomorrow. Yanis has been interesting to see what position Perez finishes tomorrow. P12 maybe. I think at best P9. I'd be surprised if he gets P7 or something because I don't think he'll be personally quick enough to be able to get that high up. Plus, again, it is hard to overtake at this circuit. But let me finish up the poll in the chat. There's not been that many votes, but enough to determine a winner, clearly. So I asked who's your driver of the day for qualifying in Hungary. 20 votes, and 60% of you gone for Lando Norris, 25% Daniel Ricciardo, 10% Piastri, 5% for Sainz. And yeah, I agree. Lando Norris, clearly, driver of the day. And again, reminder, I won't be live for the race tomorrow, but I will be recording a podcast reviewing the race and also going through any viewer questions as well. So make sure to go to that community post that Rook posted in the chat and add your viewer questions. And yeah, I will go through them in the podcast. If there gets to be too many, then I might split them up. Maybe do like half of them in that episode and then half of them in the next one. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I will definitely do quite a few questions in the next episode. Then yeah, the next time I'll see you live will be next Friday. Live the day before qualifying at the Belgian Grand Prix, where I'll do a qualifying preview. Then I'll be back on Sunday, next Sunday, live for the race watch along for the Belgian Grand Prix, which of course will be the final session of the season before the summer break. And then summer break, 3 or 4 weeks long. We've got plenty of stuff to get through in that break as well, content-wise. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming on today. Been great to have you along. If you have smash the like button or subscribe, thank you very much. And make sure to do so if you haven't already. Because, of course, we will keep doing this content throughout the year. But also, what was I going to say? I completely forgot what I was going to say. Yeah. I think I already said it. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure to join the Discord server, link below in the description, I believe. Let me know. If the link, by the way, doesn't work, then let me know and I'll try and fix it for the future. Because personally, I've been having a bit of trouble with the link to the Discord. So, yeah, let me know if it does or doesn't work. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming along today. And until my podcast episode that I'll record obviously tomorrow, reviewing tomorrow's Hungarian Grand Prix, and until my next live stream next Friday, previewing qualifying at Spa, it's been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.